In three, two, one. Well. Welcome to another episode of Fearlessly Parenting. Today, I have as my very special guest, Jessica Speer. Jessica is an author, thought leader, and speaker focused on the tricky social stuff that peaks during childhood and adolescence. She holds a master's degree in the social sciences and explores social and emotional topics in ways that connect with kids. She is regularly featured in and contributes to media outlets on topics related to kids, parenting, and friendship. So, without further ado, here's Jessica Speer.
Thank you.
Jessica,
Thank you for
I
having me,
welcome you.
Stan.
Yeah, hey, it's a pleasure to have you aboard today.
That's
And
great to be here. I'm excited to talk with you.
well, I appreciate your patience, moms and dads. We were trying to get our calendars together because and we finally did. And I'm excited to have her here because she's going to talk to you, particularly those of you with teenagers today, about some of the social struggles with adolescence. And but first of all, I'd just like for her to talk a little bit about herself and her book.
Sure. Well, my name is Jessica Speer, and I am an author. I'm also love to do research and dive into human relationships. So I've got a background in social sciences, and I've always just been profoundly curious about humans and how we connect. And so when my daughters hit their preteen years, I noticed they
Uh
had
oh.
some social struggles, and it reminded me of my very own, which got me really curious. So then I dove into there's a great body of research on this. It gave me some ideas of things that might help kids navigate this phase. That led into a friendship program that I ran for actually both boys and girls. And that eventually grew into my first book, which is all about friendship. So that's where I am today, still focusing on that.
It, And one thing I wanted to ask you about, and I've been looking forward to asking this question, uh, why is it that social struggles intensify during the adolescent phase of our lives?
And I love that question because I think the answer brings a lot of relief to parents. Sometimes we think, oh, there's something wrong with our kid or what is going on. But what's happening is something developmental and really important. So when kids are really young, let's say, preschool, early elementary school, friendships are forming based on play and
Hmm.
proximity. Who is in your neighborhood, who's in your class, and it's all about play. There it comes a shift, and it happens differently for every kid because we're all developing at a different pace. But
True, true.
starting, upper elementary into middle school and into high school, there's a shift. And in this shift, it moves from that play and proximity to looking more for from different things from our friendship. So
Hmm.
we're starting to pull away from our families, so we're starting to individuate and figure out who we are as adolescents and preteens. So we're putting a lot more weight in our friendships. It's not necessarily about play. It's more about shared interests,
Hmm.
acceptance. They're also starting to explore their own identity for the first time. So who
Yeah, they
am
are.
I? Yeah, who am I and who are my friends? And do I like my friends? And do my friends even like me? So we start to see some shifting of groups and friendships, especially as kids transition into middle school. And then, of course, we've got puberty going on at the same time. So emotions are big, there's a lot of changes. So it tends to so the preteen and the teen years tend to be a time of a lot of change and maybe some instability in our kids' lives. But like I said, that is just developmentally okay. So part of the reason I wanted to really explore this with kids and parents is it feels like it's maybe unstable, but it's just because we're figuring out this next phase and who we connect with and who we are as individuals.
Well, I tell you what, I like what you said there. And mom and dad, hear her. Your teen, your preteen, going into teen, and even your teen are undergoing some changes. Some of those are physical, but then there's emotional change, and because they're going through changes, which all of them will, and all of us have, that does not make you a bad parent. It does not make you an imperfect parent. You can get some help. I know I needed help in my church. I I became part of the usher team, Jessica, so that I could be around some gentlemen who have been dads longer than I have, so that I have somebody that I can ask questions of. Moms and dads. One of the reasons I do this podcast is so I can bring in people like Jessica who can talk to you about things that you can do to help become the best version of yourself as a parent, while at the same time help your child become the best version of themselves as they're navigating this difficult time of transitioning from a child to a preteen, and even into being a teen. Uh, have I kind of hit on some right things there,
Yes,
Jessica?
absolutely. Because I think it causes alarm for parents when our kids start to pull away, or we see them, maybe, hanging out with a different group of kids. And, of course, we're still there. We are there. We are their sounding board. We are loving them unconditionally. But it can be unsettling for parents when all these changes are happening. But what's happening under the surface is our kids are figuring out who they are. They're figuring out how to be in healthy relationships, healthy friendships, and we can kind of coach them and guide them along the way. But it's a really important phase where, for the first time in their lives, they're really kind of leading this on their own, and trying to find out, which friendships feel safe and accepting, which friendships, do I really want to grow, and which ones do I feel like maybe I don't want to grow this friendship. So it's a really important time, but it can feel unsettling to parents, but also kids, because never in their life are they going to feel the need to fit in more than those preteen and teen years. And we all
Amen.
remember that.
And there's a little bit of that that sticks with us, even as we move into our late teens and early 20s and everything. And it's just a matter of growth. We need to be able to grow.
Yep.
So let me make a transition and let's talk about growth. Uh, you had talked about in your bio and some of the information I had read on you, the necessity for a growth mindset for social and emotional development.
Hmm.
Why is that growth mindset necessary, first of all? And then what do you mean by a growth mindset?
Great question. And so, we've learned through a lot of research that a growth mindset, when it comes to like academics and, skill building, is really helpful to kids. And it basically means that we know we're not, maybe we our brain is plastic. It's constantly growing, constantly changing, and we have the ability to learn new skills. And so when kids grow up, especially in an academic environment, that they know that they're not born with a certain level of intelligence, they can actually grow their intelligence by working hard. So we coach parents to say, you don't know this yet, but with work, you're gonna master this math skill. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's yeah
love that.
that's the definition of the growth mindset, and that is a huge relief to kids. They're like, okay, I am okay, I can get this over time. So let's switch that into the realm of, social emotional,
Please,
and
please.
and it works the same way. So we are all growing skills in our relationships. We are all good at some relationship skills, and maybe we're not so great at other relationship skills. Same thing for our kids. So if they see that in themselves, that yes, I'm going to mess up, I'm going to goof up in my friendships, but I'm working on this. And we see that in our relationships too, that this friendship is not perfect, because no friendship is perfect, and we're all working on these skills. It'll help them to just stay open to others, stay open to growth and change in themselves, because, we're all developing these skills over time, over the course of our lives. And of course, we all mess up too. We mess up in our relationships all the time, don't we?
Well, you know what? You're absolutely right about that. And I like to challenge moms and dads out there. You are gonna mess up. I told my daughter she gets mad at me every once in a while, but I said, guess what? Your daddy gonna mess up. I'm not perfect, and I'm never gonna pretend that I am perfect. And I'm probably going to say something which you might interpret one way and I mean something else, but irregardless, you get upset at me. But it's how we handle when we make mistakes, because that's a teaching opportunity for your child by modeling what you do. Say, you know what? Yeah, I messed up
Yeah.
there. I messed up. Daddy could do better. I will try to do better, but I need for you to work with me, and I'm going to try to do better. By that, I'm modeling that it's okay to
Mm-hmm.
make mistakes, learn from it, and be open about it. But doesn't that help your child to grow that mindset that you were talking about?
Yes, because it makes them, stay out of a cycle of shame. So if they see you admitting
Mm,
to, oh, I goofed up there, and a sincere apology and how you might try it better next time, when they do that, they're more likely to admit and to own that mistake and to learn from it rather than try to hide it or try to deny it. It opens all of us up to our humanness, that we're figuring this out and we're goofing up and we're doing the best we can and we're learning and growing. In a school setting, that'll help kids, because they're going to run into kids that they really struggle with or they really don't connect with. And we as humans have a tendency to label, that this
yes, we
person
do.
is this, this is a bully or this is a bossy kid or this, but the truth is, they might be behaving like that right now, but that's not really who they are and who they're going to
No.
be. And I love looking back at my daughter. I have two daughters, and looking back at the kids that they've grown up with and now seeing the changes in those kids. It's really hopeful. The kids that we might have labeled a certain way are different kids these days. So, staying open to that, the changes in ourselves, the changes in others. I mean, that doesn't mean that we are going to be friends with everybody and we're going to, like everybody, but just seeing that potential in people, in ourselves, that we can grow and change, and we learn from our mistakes.
Well, another thing I see that you have that caught my interest is 9 hidden friendship truths. So, tell me what some of those truths are, and why you picked out these 9 truths.
And this actually is kind of the basis for my book about friendship. As I was diving into this and exploring this topic with kids and running friendship groups, I realized, there are some underlying truths to friendship that we learn kind of over the course
Hmm.
of our lives, and sometimes in painful ways. So in my friendship programs, what I like to do is, what happens if we kind of just talk about these right from the get-go? So we don't learn them. We're going to learn them, we're going to experience them, but it might be a little less painful. So one of the friendship truths is that friendships have different phases and change over time. So my book is for, middle grade students. So 8 to 12 years old. And that's when a lot of kids start to experience these changes. And sometimes we can, think that change means there's something wrong with us or there's something wrong with this person, but the truth is that friendships do change over time, over the
Yes, they
course
do.
of our lives. So if we come into this knowing, that friendships do have changes and that's okay, my hope is that it helps kids realize, there's nothing wrong with them. We are all figuring this out, and friendships have different seasons. So yeah, so that's a simple truth that I think when I was working with girls in my groups, that was a huge relief. Like, oh, okay, there's nothing wrong with me. Friendships do change.
Right. Seasons. I love that friendships have seasons. Uh, there were friends I had back in college. Some of them I still talk to now, and they were really good friends. But that was that season. Now I'm in another season of my life, and that season was different than the season I was in when I was in high school. I think right now there's one, maybe 2 people from when I graduated high school that I still speak. And it's just because we went different ways, different states.
Mhm.
I joined the military. Things that just took us to different areas. And after graduating college and becoming an officer again, I went to a different place. So, moms and dads, there are seasons, and you know what? Your kids don't know this. Your preteens and teens don't know this. And it's up to you to let them know, just like Jessica says, there are seasons. It's going to be okay. And you can find out more if you get Jessica's book. She's got these truths all laid out as a guide for you so that you can sit down and have a realistic conversation with your child on friendship and help them better understand what they're going through. And I'm going to have a link to her book in the podcast description. Every time you come to Fearless Parenting, you need to check out the podcast description, because in that description, I have links to the resources and services of my guests on parenting, and you need to check this out. Jessica has an awesome book. Jessica, I like to follow up, and I got to ask you this. What is this thing you call the friendship pyramid? And why is it useful? When working with our preteens and teens.
So this pyramid, it's shaped like a pyramid, of course. So this is one of the resources in the book, and it includes a bunch of the truths that I'm speaking about. So let's picture this in our heads. We've got a pyramid. At the very tippy top of the pyramid is our close friends, and that's a small part of the pyramid, because as we now know as adults, it's hard to find close friends, and we
Yes.
as humans tend to have five or less, because those relationships take harder, they take more time to develop, they take more trust, they take more
Amen.
connection. So sometimes we might only have one close friend, and sometimes we might have none, and that feels really unsettling, and especially in the preteen and the teen years, but the truth about close friends is they are hard to find. So we all might go through a stage in life where we don't have that, and that feels really unstable. So it's an important time to really guide our kids if they end up in a phase where they feel like they don't have that. But what's really important for preteens and teens to know is that it is hard to find these folks, and that's okay. It's just they're gifts in our lives. Over the course of our lives, we come across people that we really connect with at these deeper levels, but that doesn't happen every day. So
No,
that's
it
why
doesn't. It
it's
does
a
not.
teeny tiny top of the pyramid. So most of the pyramid is this lumped into the big middle, which is friends. And so for preteens and teens these days, that can mean lots of things. So they might be just friends on social media, or they might be friends because they're on a team together, or they might be in a class. So those friendships feel different, than our close friends. And, we might not share as much. But, we like this person, and there's some sort of connection there, but that's pretty broad. And especially since some of these friends might not actually be in person, there's not a lot, maybe not of disclosure about ourselves. It's a different feeling, but we're going to throw them in that friends bucket. And then at the very base of the pyramid, we have acquaintances. So all these people we don't know, that, we might see across town, or we might, be at the same party as them, and they are possible new friends. So what's helpful for students to see, and kids, is that, there's different levels and phases of friendship, so running up and down the side of the friendship is that change. So you can have a close friend, that actually might go back to an acquaintance over time, or you can have an acquaintance that might grow into a close friend someday. So, misunderstandings and change are common in this pyramid, but it helps to kind of give them the lay of the land, and to know that new friends are always out there too.
And you know what? There will be misunderstandings with some of the people that you meet, some of the friends, because it's not because we're bad people or that they're bad people. It's just that we all have unique behavioral characteristics. Um, I'm a Maxwell certified behavioral consultant, and one of the things that I try to tell moms and dads, you got at least four different styles. You got your dominant Ds, and luckily only 3% of the world are made up of us, because everybody else would kill us otherwise. My daughters and I, high I, just life of the party. She just loves people, loves hanging out with people. My wife, uh, salt of the earth, volunteer. She's a supportive type person. She's all about the processes of life, which makes her great at her job. And then there's my son. He's high functioning autistic, and he is a rule keeper. So he's very analytical. He knows that he's right because he has all the details to prove to you that he is right. And my daughter will think that he's arguing, but he's not. He's just telling you all the facts, and there are many facts that he has of why he's right. And then sometimes we get into conflicts because we meet our polar opposite, and we think that they don't like us, or that they're bullying us or being mean to us, when they're they're not mean, they're not bad, they're not necessarily a bully. They're just not you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay.
I love that. One of my mantras is, there's always more to the story that we don't see or understand, and I
Mhm.
love that you have this deep knowledge of those, people in your home because, yeah, there is so much more to all of us, and you're right. All that stuff that makes us complex human beings is what causes a lot of friction and conflict in relationships. We are so unique, and our needs are so unique, and even our
Yeah.
expectations for relationships are so unique. So I always encourage my kids, to give people the grace. So this friendship might
Yes.
not be right for them now for their very own unique reasons, and that's okay. Let's try to not take everything so personally. Let's realize there's more to the story. Let's avoid the assumptions and let people be on the journey that they're on.
And sometimes even that friend will make a mistake because news alert, nobody's perfect.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So your friend's gonna make a mistake, and guess what? You gonna make one too. It's sooner or
Yes.
later, it's just a matter of time. And you know what? You just gotta have grace. I love what you said about grace. Grace is so important. And moms and dads, while your kids are struggling with socially and during the preteens and adolescents, you just got to have some grace with them too, because they never been there before, and so you have to guide them through it. And you know what? You haven't been there before, because you may say that you have. Okay, I have one who's gone through the teens, and I got one that's coming up. But guess what? It may be a little bit different from them, and you should expect that it would be different. Am I right about that, Jessica?
Oh, yes. It's going to be totally different. They're each having their own experience, so it will be different. And I think as parents, we can model this. We can model that grace. And if we want to throw a really fancy psychological term on it, there's a term called hostile or negative attribution bias versus a neutral or positive attribution bias. And what that means is we as humans have a tendency, we've kind of a knee jerk reaction when something happens to assume the best in people or to assume the worst in people.
Mm,
So the negative and hostile attribution bias, happens when we might, assume the worst, and a neutral or positive is when we're going to maybe give the benefit of the doubt to people. And studies have shown that those people that can cultivate a neutral or a positive attribution bias, they're just happier people. So this is something that we can cultivate within ourselves, and we can cultivate in our home, to try to give the benefit of the doubt to people. Don't always assume the negative and the hostile intent. Until we know the whole story, let's try to see the best in people, and that, of course, is going to ripple through all of our relationships.
well, as Paul Harvey says, there's always the other side of the story. Now, some of you younger parents out there might not know who Paul Harvey is, but you could Google it like we could Google a lot of other different things. Well, moms and dads, again, I want to encourage you to check out the podcast description, because I'm going to have a link there to Jessica's book and her website. Please go check her out. And you may not need what she has out there now, but there may come a time, you moms and dads who have 5, 6, 7, 8 year olds, okay, maybe it's not time yet, or maybe your child is about to hit those preteen years. I definitely want to encourage you parents and guardians to get hot on this and get this book, and prepare yourself for that time, because if you're intentional in your preparation, you're more likely going to follow through with it with your child. Well, Jessica, I want to thank you for taking of your time and being on my podcast for my moms and dads and guardians that I have out there.
Oh, thank you for having me, and thank you for what you do. What a gift to parents out there to have you as a resource. You've got their back and you're feeding them such positive information. So thank you, Stan. It's such a pleasure to meet you.
Well, I appreciate the kind words, but it's just from experience, which a lot of that is falling down and making mistakes myself and learning from it, and then trying to tell other people so that they don't make the same mistakes. Well, moms, dads, guardians, this brings us to the end of this episode. One more time, I want to remind you, check out the podcast description where you'll find a link to Jessica's book and her website. And I want to challenge you, as I always do, go forth and fearlessly parent. God bless. And we're out.
Great. Oh, excellent.